Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back. It is your host, Cesar Espino at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Sheila Davis. Hey, Sheila, how are you?
Good. Thanks, Cesar. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for being here and joining us. Before we get started, let me just give the listeners and viewers a little bit of your background. So Sheila Davis is a speaker, mentor, podcaster, and digital marketer. She is the creator of Yes Women's Network and the messy back end of Entrepreneurship podcast. She loves working with female business owners to build an income-generating business and put it into autopilot so they can also live their life while serving their purpose. Wow, that's awesome. So, before we get started, let me know more about you and your background. Where were you born? How was your, childhood background? Just kind of tapped into that.
Sure, you bet. So I was actually born in Mayberry, which is most people know it as Mayberry from the TV show, the Andy Griffith Show. But actually, the name of the town is Mount Airy, and so that's where I was born. I lived there for a while, and then we moved out to Gaithersburg, Maryland, and then we lived in Arizona. So mostly, I grew up in Arizona. Now I live in Utah. I had a fantastic childhood. I have wonderful parents, as they have to be because they have 9 children. And I'm the oldest girl, and so I learned responsibility very quickly, basically raised that way. And so I had a great life, and I've had a lot of trials along that way. We all have this plan for how we want our life to be. And if we all look back from where we are, we definitely didn't follow that exact plan. Even if you are where you want to be, you didn't follow that exact plan. Right. And so I've been through a lot, but with my 5 children are the best thing that I've ever done. And the way that I kind of got doing what I'm doing is actually from being a single mom. I found that as a single mom, the resources for me were very small. There were, if you hear somebody going in and they say they want to do a service project or something, you'll never hear them mention, I want to help a single mom or I want to help a military wife. And you'll never hear a single mom or a military wife asking for help either. Because we are very strong, we are determined, and, I think, failure and struggles make you stronger, and they make you stand in your own power. And so that's why I started Yes Women's Network, was to be able to help women have a resource, a place where they can go and get trusted help and not have to give their email to everybody else and to go all these different places. They'll have one place they can go and find lots of different resources.
Got it. And so is this Yes Women Network, is that a something you do through social media, or actually you conduct meetings or those kind of events with women?
So right now it is online. So they can go to the website and they can sign up for free, and they can access any of the trainings there and any of our contacts that we have there. I do have a Facebook group that's not super active right now, but we're getting ready to reactivate that. I went through a trial last year, things got hard. And so last year we kind of tapered out a little bit, but this year we're getting it back going. As far as like regular meetings, that's one of the things I'm actually headed toward. We are building a licensing opportunity where people can license an entire area and they can use our brand within that area. And then under their license, they can have brand ambassadors who can have their own local meetings, whatever niche they want. We have people in 8 countries that are wanting to do those licensing. And so then the brand ambassadors, they can do anything from working with entrepreneurs to working with, moms who have toddlers to, I've got some gals who want to do some knitting classes, some people who want to teach women how to repair cars. Pick your niche and you'll be able to do that under our brand pretty soon within your area. And so we're encouraging those smaller groups to get together and talk about or do anything they want to do within our brand, and also within those, the standards of the brand. So that if they, for example, if we've got a woman in Germany who's a military wife and her family's getting ready to transfer back to, let's say, I don't know, the beautiful North Carolina, they can contact a group there local in North Carolina and say, hey, can you all tell me where to find a house to rent? Where am I going to take my kids to get their haircut? What's the best schools? Can anybody help me out there? And so then we would have that network of women all over the world that can help each other with whatever, anything small to big.
Got you. Awesome. And and then the passion or the idea derive from for you just to be able to help women. Was there something specific that said, you know what, this is what I want to do instead of something else? Because there's different things that you could have done, right? And where did this idea really grow, for you?
Sure. So I'm actually a digital marketer.
Okay.
I work online, and I've been doing that for about 8 years. I started out as a virtual assistant, and I started out very quickly. I hit the ground running, and I was picking up clients very quickly. And I realized that wasn't normal for people to be able to pick up clients very quickly. And so a lot of the virtual assistants were coming to me saying, you just got here, how come you're full of clients? And so then I started a virtual assistant network where I interviewed some of the VAs, and then I was able to refer clients to them. And while I was doing that, and while I was going through everything, I was working with a mentor, and I realized that what I had done is built myself into a job type feeling of a situation where I wasn't really feeling the passion of what I was doing. I love the work I do. I love the people I work with. However, there was something more that I felt like I needed to do. And so I was talking to my mentor one day, and he said, after this is a 2-hour conversation, Cesar, you know how that goes. Like, these things don't happen so fast.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So he said, finally, he's just like, well, what is it that you want to do for women? And I said, you know what? I want to be that person that when they say, oh crap, now what? That they call me. Yeah. And so I found myself in that situation several times. My daughter came home and she made the drill team. $1,200 I had to have that week. What was I going to do? I mean, my money tree out back, it struggles sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and as a single mom especially, and as an entrepreneur, as anybody in the world will find that you get yourself in that situation where you're like, crap, now what am I going to do? And he said, okay, what's the opposite of that? And I said, okay, well, let's, looking at that as a perception of, if I lost my keys and I was like, crap, I lost my keys. Then when you found them, you would go, yes. Or if somebody actually came out of the woodwork and said, I'd love to help pay for your daughter's drill fees, that would have been like, yes. Yeah. So that's why we decided to call it Yes Women's Network, so that women could go out and they could find out, during those oh crap moments or whatever, they would be able to find their yes within themselves.
Yeah. You know what? I love that because it's very uplifting. It is very positive, right? Like, and even when you think about it, going from a negative state of mind to like looking at that and just even that saying that word kind of puts you into a positive state of mind. And then I'm already like picturing this in my head, even going and saying it like with passion and just it changes the physiology of your output, right? Which is good when you think about it. That's, I think, one of the things that we need a lot in anything that we do, right? Is being able to figure out how we can go from a negative state of mind to a positive state of mind through either a word like yes or just small triggers, right? So that actually just brought another question for me. Like, is there anything that you do to kind of stay active and stay very positive? Or everybody goes through down moments, right? And I get that. Yet what counts is how you get yourself out of that down moment or that negative state of mind into a positive state of mind. Are there anything that you do that helps you with that?
Yeah, definitely. So I did go through a really bad time a couple of years ago. And I found it's interesting because my daughter actually, who was in Washington at the time, I found out she was going through a downtime. So as an empath, I was feeling her pain and mine. So I kind of felt like I was doubling up on that.
Wow. Yeah.
And I got to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. And, I'd go, like, I'm embarrassed to say, I'd go a few days without showering. I wouldn't get dressed. I would, I know everybody's doing that now with the pandemic, but at the time, it wasn't cool to not get dressed during the day. Right, and so I had 4 children at home, and that doesn't look good. It's hard on them as well when they see mom really struggling. And so I thought, okay, what is the one thing that I can do to really make myself feel good? Also, by the way, I realized I'd put on 50 pounds. And so it was time for some change. And so I looked at myself and I said, what's the one thing that I can do today to make me feel good about myself? Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, that was just to get up and shower, get ready for the day. If I didn't do anything else, I would shower. If I had the time, I have long hair, so sometimes it's a pain in the rear to fix. So I'd, fix my hair, put on mascara. On the days I couldn't get myself to get in the shower, I'd at least put on mascara. So for me, yes brings out a whole other thing. Now I can't, that's so bad. I can't remember my own thing. So, you experience success.
Oh, I love
so you get up and what can make you feel successful? And sometimes all that is, especially for moms with brand new babies, is to put on some mascara. You hear your baby crying, you feel like, oh man, now I got to start my day running. We'll stop and put on some mascara. Just one little tiny thing that makes you experience success that day. You've heard that talk. There's a military guy, who says the first thing you should do is make your bed every morning. That's another thing for me. And even actually in my worst days, I would get up and make my bed, even if I got back in it. I didn't realize that was part of my success for the day, is that I had accomplished something. And so I was telling a friend of mine's mother about this because I was going to go on a TV show and talk about it. And I was telling her, how does this sound? You experience success. And I said, even if all it is putting on your mascara. And she said, you know what? I don't have eyelashes anymore. I wish I had taken time to do that.
Wow.
So it's those little tiny things. People think you have to do all these grand, huge things. And it really isn't. Those grand, huge things, it's messy to get there. And there's a lot of tiny little steps. The ocean's made of one drip of water, right?
Yeah. And I was going to say that based on what you just mentioned, it takes that one little step, and it's just really doing one thing that is going to change the course of your mental being, and also that state of mind, and also what are you trying to do that day, right? And so a lot of times, people think like, I gotta do this major thing, like radical change. No, it's just changing that one thing that anything, right, for the matter, that can change it. I forget, I think it's the guy you were talking about, and I was actually listening to him yesterday. But anyways, yeah, he said make your bed, do this or do that. There's another person who says, just start counting down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, there you go. And then just that change right there, it changes the things in your brain, right? So a lot of times people forget that it can be as simple as one small action to be able to do, right? So that's good. I like one thing that you said, there's strength in joy and joy in strength. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So one of the things that I found when I was really struggling was finding joy. And I found several times over my life where finding my own inner joy was a struggle. The first time I realized that was when I realized that I'd actually kind of lost my own heartbeat. When I feel my own heartbeat, I'm feeling joy. And so that happened when I was going through my second divorce. And I had sent my older children off with their dad and my younger children off with their mother or their dad. And I was home alone, and I just was feeling the lowest of low, and I was hurting. And, when you're in depression, it's physical pain. And so I decided that it would be really a good idea to take some sleeping pills to sleep. I had no other intention but to sleep. And when I took that pill, I took 2 actually. Normally I take a half.
Yeah.
I could obviously tell I was not in my right mind. Then I thought, well, that'll be fine and good if I can sleep, but physically my body ached. And so then I went ahead and took some painkillers. I'm not suggesting this to anybody.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
And the next morning when I woke up, I realized I'd been sick by the bed. And thank heavens I had, because when my children came up the stairs, they would not have found their mother alive.
Wow. Yeah.
And that day I realized, man, I've gone really too far. I don't know. And so I'm sitting that night with them all. For some reason, they all think they have to be touching me all the time. They're always in my bubble. They said, well, we were born from your bubble. We can stay. I'm like, okay. So I was watching a movie. They were all little. I think my oldest was 18. My youngest was, I think, 6. And so we were watching a movie. And I said to myself, how can I make sure that what happened last night never happens again? And I looked within myself and I realized I had no idea who I even was. How am I going to take care of these 5 children by myself? Yep. How am I going to move forward? What am I going to do next? And I realized I had no happiness within myself. I couldn't feel my own heartbeat. I was gone. I had lost myself.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, what do I have? And I realized that my joy fell within my children. So I found that for me, if I could remember the joy that I have with my children, the joy that I want them to have in their life. You know, we all want our children, our clients, anybody who we work with to do better than we've ever done. So we have to show them that path. And so I looked within myself, and just that tiny little mustard seed of joy that I had within myself because of these 5 children is what was that catalyst for me. It was just the smallest little thing. And so every morning, that's the first thing I think of is what can I do to show my children? And, you know, they're so cute. They call me their rock star mama. This was about 12 years ago that this happened. And so the first thing I think about every morning.
You know, and that's one thing that when you think about it, if people go back and say, okay, well, there's nothing for me to go after, or there's no one for me to do the things that I do for, right? And a lot of times it's finding that it could be seen as your why, it could be seen as your purpose. What is it that there's one thing that you're still here for and you're doing. And so even going through a very difficult time, I think that when you go back and start looking deep down and you find, like you said, you found that little seed of joy, like, that's like an aha moment. Like, okay, I get it. I have to make this change. And I know that's difficult for people to come to realization when it comes down to that. It is very difficult for people to look into that. Yet once you find it, and so you and that's why I love your quote. There's strength in joy, and joy in strength. Once you find that strength, then you can start little by little, you know, one step at a time, start coming out of that, right? One thing that I have a saying, and I keep saying that if you are breathing today, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, whatever it is, if you're right now you're checking this out and you're going through some sort of challenge, there's a purpose of you watching this. There's a purpose of you listening to us. There's a purpose of you being here. There's a purpose that you got up this morning. That means that whatever you believe in, God, the creator, Mother Nature, whatever you believe in, is not done with you. There's a purpose for you to continue to move forward, right? So it'll be a shame when people say, you know what, I don't have the will to continue, yet they haven't even gone deep down to find that joy, right? And so you have to do that. You have to be able to find that.
Yeah, one little piece of joy has strength in it. And so when you find it, whether you have to have strength first or joy first, it doesn't matter. They feed off of each other. They really do. And if you think about the show Groundhog Day, right? So think about how Bill Murray, every day he got up and how did he act during that day? And when he finally figured it out, and I think somebody figured out one time that it would have taken like 3 years of that same day for him to learn and do everything that he had done. But once he decided to get to know people, complete strangers, to, you know, realize a talent that he'd always thought he wanted to do, but wasn't sure how to do for whatever it was, even though he all did it for Andy, you know, he did it something new every single day. And so sometimes you have to go out and find a whole bunch of new things to do. Smile at everybody you see. I know we can't hug each other right now, but you know, just smiling at somebody. Sometimes I know for me, I've looked over in a car and I've had a bad day, looked over a guy next to me smiling. Made me happy too, you know, go out there and spread some joy with yourself and give somebody else some strength. And that puts strength within you as well. Yeah,
definitely. I'm curious to know, if are you able to share more or less some of the struggles that you were going through? Because I believe there's a lot of people, and specifically women alike, like you mentioned, that might be going through some challenges. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody late last night, a female, that is also a single mother and going through some challenges. So that just led me to believe there's a lot of challenges and a lot of stressful situations, a lot of depression, a lot of I cannot do this anymore kind of moments. And you know, I wanted to get more of your backstory as to what might have happened there. And obviously you've been able to overcome that, which is awesome. And then again, with 5 kids, it's important to know, like, if you can do it with 5 kids, you can do it with 1 or 2 or 3, and you find those things. So can you share some of them?
Some of my other struggles.
Yeah, definitely.
So the thing is that for me, sometimes in order to find myself, I have to look outside of myself. I think for women especially, seeing what's going on outside of us, we have empathy. I think a lot of times for people, we put ourselves in their shoes a lot easier because we're emotional, a little more emotional. I know I'm finding that there are a lot of men who are very emotional. Yeah. But if we can look and see what's going on with those people around us, then we can look inside ourselves and realize, man, what's going on within me is a lot easier than what they're dealing with. I have a friend who I served for a year. Unfortunately, I didn't live close to her long enough to do that. We're still fantastic friends. She's a quadriplegic. She's 54 years old. When she was 20 years old, she was in a car accident. It flipped end over end 6 times. She remembers her head hitting the roof all 6 times. Wow. And when I asked her one time, I said, when did you know that something was wrong? And she said, as soon as this car stopped moving, I couldn't feel anything. It was like my whole body had disappeared. And so for her to have experienced all of that and watching what she goes through for 34 years, never having been in love, better to love or lost, definitely better to have loved and lost, because watching her not have gone through that, not being able to have children. She's lived in her family home her entire life, 54 years. And yet she still has joy herself. The way that she has joy in her own life is by serving other people. Believe it or not, without the option of legs and limbs, she still serves other people. And that's how she finds her joy. So for me, whenever the trials that I've gone through, and, I've had my fair share, I admit it. I have had 3 failed marriages. They all have very different reasons why they have failed. I look back on my life. I had a full ride scholarship to a college for track. My junior year of high school, I was one of the top runners in the state of Arizona, excuse me. And I had that scholarship. So my life was planned out. I wanted to go to the '88 Olympics, and I got sick the summer before, or the winter before my senior year. And I literally missed the first 6 months of school because I was sick. So lost my scholarship, changed my whole path. But if I look back at all of those things, losing my scholarship, 3 failed marriages, how many of us have had failures in our businesses as well? All of those different things and all the little things in between. If I look back at those, I would not trade them for anything, because all of those things that I went through, all of the things that I experienced made me who I am today. So no matter where I was at any given time, looking back on my life, the only thing that will benefit me in looking back is to be able to move forward. You can't walk backward looking behind you. You have to turn around, let it go, forgive, move on, let go of the anger. And if you let go of that anger, and if you forgive the people, trust me, they'll get it. If they deserve it, they'll get it. You don't have to do it. And believe me, it'll be worse than anything you could do. Let it go. And then move forward with your life and be better because of what you went through. And looking back, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God. And I truly believe that a lot of the things I went through so that when I'm speaking, or if I'm mentoring a woman, if one of them comes to me and says, I'm dealing with XYZ, I can almost guarantee you about 90% of the time I can say, I've been there, I've done it. And so, like I said, all my marriages were very different. And so I went through a lot of different things that women go through. Sometimes they'll suffer for many, many more years. I suffered for a fewer amount of years, I think, so that I could have the experience so that I can help the women that I'm helping. And that's what I find is they'll come to me and say, I've had this happening to me. How can I help it? And I can say to them truly, honestly, with full empathy, I understand. And they know I understand, because they, you can feel that whether somebody truly understands or if they're just like pretending they understand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's when we talked about, the past, right. And even looking at it from that perspective, I found that sometimes people tend to they're living in the present, or they're in the present living in the past. Right.
Yes.
And so that's one thing, like you mentioned, like, even for me, like I look back now and everything that I've gone through is like, it served me a purpose. And so now, instead of me, I changed things a little bit, right? Instead of me talking about, I failed at this, or I wasn't good at this, or whatever the case may be, or I could have done better, I don't even go there anymore. I said, what was the lesson that I could have, that I needed to learn, okay, from that experience? what can I take from that? So I look at it from that perspective, similar to you, like going through 3 marriages. It's like, okay, what is the lesson? It's not that I was bad or anything like that. What was the lesson that I need to learn from number 1, 2, 3, 4? It doesn't matter how many, right? What was the lesson? And when you start looking at things from that perspective, I believe that you can find joy, you can find strength, you can find a lot more things in your life for the near future. Yet people tend to get lost in the past. They live in the past. They go back to the past to find validation, right? They go to the past and say, okay, I don't want to do this. Yet they're still focusing on that so much. And I do believe also that whatever you focus on expands. So they're focusing on that so much that it turns out to be that same scenario all over again, right? And so that's one thing that I will probably encourage a lot of people is that, again, don't look at the past from that perspective. It's an educational experience, and it's really just a lesson, and take that for what it is so you can become a better person, right? The other thing that I like what you mentioned, and I came up with something a couple of, I don't know, a year ago, and I was just kind of thinking about it, and is to be rich and wealthy. And I don't mean monetary, right? And so it's, I think, more deeper than that. You got to understand that from that perspective. To be rich and wealthy, inside and out, you have to be at peace with yourself and everybody else, right? And you talk about forgive and forget, or forgive and just move on, right? And I believe that, if you want to be rich and wealthy, joy, happiness, abundance, maybe even riches, maybe financially, whatever, you have to forgive yourself for the things that you probably did or didn't do. It doesn't matter. And you also have to forgive other people that might have hurt you, people that might have done things to you. When you can come at peace with that, I believe that you can, again, find that joy and the strength, and so that's one of the things that I always embody a lot for people to understand, Now, go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. I think you're right. So I liked what you said, that the thing that you think about expands.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously I probably realized that somewhere, but it's so true, because you can tell what somebody's thinking about. It completely embodies their whole presence, right? If you're talking to somebody who has a lot of anger,
Mm-hmm.
every other thing that comes out of their mouth has to do with where that anger came from. And they kind of get stuck. It's like they're hitting this wall and they can't move past it because they just can't let go of it. So I love that. Yeah. Whatever you think about expands. I'm going to remember that. That's a good one.
Awesome. Good. And then what are some tactics or things that you do to stay positive and continue to move forward in raising 5 kids? And I don't know how old your kids are. Either way, though, through your life, obviously you've been raising them. So what are some advice that you can give females that might be single mothers, that might be going through some stressful situations, and again, you still have to take care of your kids and teach them well and do all these great things. What are some things you've done and that can help them?
Yeah. So my kids are ages 28 to 16.
Okay.
My oldest is a boy, and then I have 4 girls. And believe me, I love my girls. Don't get me wrong. They're some of my best friends, but my boy was a lot easier than they are.
Yeah.
And so what I found for me, and especially like through after this last divorce, which it took a lot out of me, was that, like I said, number one, I look outside of myself. I look at how I can help other people. And if I can serve someone else, if I'm having a really, really bad day, if I get on a mentoring call, I immediately feel better because I'm helping somebody. And I think that's true for anybody. It's hard to go find people to help. So go onto Facebook, go into a group, find somebody who's struggling, and make a positive comment. Even if it pains you to type that comment in, whenever you hit enter, you're going to feel better. Sometimes, when you're really down, it's physically hard to do things like that. Number 2, I think for me, is really just realizing that, like you said, I'm alive, I'm still here, and maybe just taking a day off. Sometimes, people think they give themselves a hard time. Like, today, I feel like I can't get out of bed. Okay, fine. Don't get out of bed today. Still do one thing. I always try and do at least one thing. Even on days when I really struggle, I try and do at least one thing. Usually that's a catalyst to get me going again. But do one thing, whether it's putting a dish in the dishwasher, it don't matter. Find something small to do, one thing. But take some time. Take some time, let yourself feel your feelings, and do what you need to do in order to replenish yourself. If your bucket is empty, you can't help anybody else with their bucket. And so, and if you've got a hole in the bottom of your bucket, then you need to really mend that first.
Yeah.
And so taking care of yourself is important, especially people these days. They're, you hear all these things about how, don't be so selfish and this and that and the other. Well, you do have to be somewhat selfish, because if you are not at your best, you can't help anybody else. So do that one thing, go help somebody, and give yourself a break. Just let yourself just be sometimes, go take a bath or whatever. Sometimes I just leave the house. Now, I'm lucky because my children are not little. I can just go for a drive. When I couldn't, I would just lock myself in the closet. I don't know if you saw that video on Facebook. This lady, she was actually on Ellen. She lives here in Utah. She has triplets, and they're like 2. And so she went in her pantry and she was eating a Twizzler. And she did a FaceTime or a Facebook Live or something. And she's like, y'all, my kids are out there and I'm hiding from them. And she showed like the bottom of the door. Their little hands were coming in. They were knocking on the door. And she's like, but I got to have time for myself. And sometimes that's what you got to do. Just go hide in the closet and eat yourself a piece. Now, I don't do the Twizzler thing. I do the chocolate.
The chocolate. Okay. Oh, that's awesome. No, I love that. So you talked about working on yourself, right? And I think that can be seen in multiple different aspects, self-love, self-care. What are some things that you do to do that, to work on yourself? Because I believe that people tend to forget that they forget to, one, give themselves credit. Number 2, they forget to even just start taking care of themselves in different aspects. So what are some things that you do?
Yeah, one time that I realized once that I realized not just once, but I was working until 2-3 in the morning. Instead of getting up early, I would work late. Now, mind you, like my creative mind works better late at night. So if I'm developing like a brand or a logo or something, I really do better at night. I guess I get a little bit silly at night, and so my creativity may come out a little bit more. But I'd gotten into this pattern where I was getting up at, I'd get up with the kids, get them off to school, go back to bed for a couple hours, and then I'd get up, and then I'd stay up late after they went to bed. And then I don't remember if I saw a video or I heard a podcast or something that said, it's Brendon Bouchard. The first 4 hours of your morning are the most important 4 hours of your day. And I realized I was sleeping through, quote unquote, the first 4 hours of my day. I'd get up with my children, get them all off to school, and go back to bed. I was wasting my first 4 hours. Now, the time with my children wasn't a waste, I know.
Right.
But what I also realized, and this all kind of happened at the same time. It was kind of this precipice of, I looked in the mirror and realized I'd put on weight and things like that. And so I decided I was going to get up every morning at 5:30, go for a run, because running is meditating for me. It's very, it's good, not just for me physically, but also spiritually and mentally. And so I'd get up and go running every morning. And then I would shower, make myself feel good about myself, fix myself some good breakfast, and listen to an audiobook or read a book. And I was listening to 5 Second Rule by Mel Robbins, the one that you just mentioned, High Performance Habits with Brendon Bouchard, E-Myth. I found that I really like those self-help books. And so I would do something like that to improve my mind. So I'm improving my mind and body and spirit every morning. I did meditation, I did prayer, I did all of those things. So I always wondered, like, what do people do? They say it takes them 3 hours to get ready in the morning. I was taking 3 hours to get ready in the morning. I'd get up and do all of those things. I would be to work by 8:30. And so for me, I got to kick off my day for me. If I kick off my day for me, the entire rest of the day can be for anybody else, for the rest of the world, for my kids, for clients, for whatever it takes. But those first 3 hours had to be for me. So my bucket isn't just patched up and full. It's nice and pretty.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. And when it comes down to self-love and self-care and doing or working on yourself, one thing that I tell people is make sure that you're working harder on yourself than you do on anybody else. And sometimes we forget that. We go to work, we're doing the 8 to 5 or whatever hours you're doing, and you're giving them 100%, you're giving them all your energy. You come home, and then you lay down or you watch TV or you sit down. And so when you look at that, you ended up working harder for somebody else than you did for yourself. So you have to change that. And even on those days where you are working 8 to 5 or you are a full-time mom or you are whatever the case may be, you have to find the time to be able to create something. And like you said, it could be one thing, just one small item, and work hard on yourself, right? And I started doing that. I actually started practicing that myself too, because I've gone through my own, what I consider to be my own self-development journey, and when I became a full-time entrepreneur, and I went through my own roller coaster, I had to create different habits that would put me in a different state of mind. And so I've since then now done different things, like I write, I journal every day, I do affirmations. I actually, one thing that I do, and it was kind of hard to do, again, going back to that self-love, is that I would actually look at myself in the mirror. And I do this now every day before I go to sleep, and when I wake up, and I look at myself in the mirror and I say, Cesar, I love you. Cesar, I thank you. Cesar, I appreciate you. And I do that with a smile, and I literally put myself like this. Now, I can tell you though, that is very hard to do when you first start doing that. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, on the unconscious level, you don't recognize it. And consciously, you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, it doesn't make sense. Yet, once you start doing that, just like any other habit, it's very powerful, because a lot of times people tend to find or are waiting for that validation from somebody else. Well, if nobody's going to tell you that you're loved, or somebody cares about you, or whatever the case may be, or, hey, you're doing a great job, well, you need to do it yourself, right? So anyways, that's one thing that I do. Another thing that I started doing is, if I feel like I did something great today, and I actually have like an aha moment or something wonderful, like you're talking about, you just sign up a client, like I would probably gone and I would have done like on the air, I would have done a high five myself, or I'll do like, great job, Cesar, like pat myself on the back, because again, sometimes, you don't have anyone doing that, and if you're waiting for that, it's never going to come. So why don't you just do it yourself, right? So
so if you think about it this way though, so I mean, I've had so many people tell me, you're an inspiration to me, you're so powerful, you're so whatever, and you know what I think? I'm like, why? Yeah. Why would you say that to me? Because you know what? I don't love myself sometimes. If you don't love yourself, you can get all the compliments in the world from outside resources, and you won't believe it for a minute. I love that you do that.
Yeah.
And I was trying to imagine myself doing that. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I'd probably stand there and cry. So that's a really good idea.
You got to try it. And again, it's very powerful, because again, you're connecting with yourself. You're kind of going back to what you mentioned. You find that strength within you. It's hard to do, looking at yourself in the mirror and doing that at first. Then you start looking at it, and like I say with joy, it actually changes my physiology. And I also tell people, don't just do it just to do it. It's like affirmations. If you do affirmations like, I am this, and you're not feeling it, you're not gonna get the result. It doesn't matter. Like, sometimes I'm very tired and I wake up and I'm like, I just try to lift myself up and just smile and just go at it, and it really it changes the course of your day, right?
It does. I mean, we're our own hardest critics, right?
We are.
There's outside of us who's going to tell us anything worse than we can tell ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
So changing that rhetoric in your own head, that's pretty smart. And
I do the same thing when I go to sleep, because your mind, again, is most responsive the first 15 minutes of the day when you wake up, and then the last 15 minutes when you go to sleep, right? And so if you installed good habits or powerful words in the mind unconsciously, you're gonna go to sleep with that. That's when people say, it's funny. There was a couple of people that I was talking to, and they're like, yeah, I like to watch scary movies at the end of the, right before I go to sleep. And then they say, I had a nightmare. Well, guess what? You install in your brain, right, the thought of a scary movie or something frightful. So therefore, you're going to have a nightmare, right? So you have to change all of that. And again, it goes back to that. I do believe that it is so critical, the things you watch, the things you listen to, the people that you talk to, the people like you and I that are you're connecting with, because all of that are programs that are going into your brain. And again, all of that helps, when we're looking at how can we overcome different obstacles, how can I help and empower more women by giving them ideas. Like, you have to create those different things. Otherwise, you're only feeding your mind with negative thoughts, right?
Yep, absolutely. You're so right. So my kids will tell me that, I had a nightmare. Like, okay, what's the last thing you did before you went to sleep last night?
Yeah.
And so, that's really, it is so powerful. I actually asked somebody this question the other day. What's the first thing you think about in the morning and the last thing you think about before you go to bed? And I think that question surprised him, but his answer surprised me even more. He said, the first thing I think about is get your butt out of bed and do something. And I was so impressed by that. I was like, well, that's good. So he actually has something. If you ask a lot of people this, they don't really have an answer like you do. Right. Yeah, and then he said, the last thing I think about before I go to bed is how can I make tomorrow better? I said, if I ask myself that question before I go to bed, I won't sleep. I'll stay up all night, like thinking in my mind, like as entrepreneurs, we have all these ideas all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I could do this. And then if I don't get up and do those things, or heaven forbid, I forget about them, or I'd get up and get a notepad. So I couldn't do that before I went to bed. So I have to find ways to shut my brain down at night. So I'll listen to quiet music or meditation or something like that. But, those are the two most important parts of your day, the morning and the evening, so that you can trigger. I mean, in Mel Robbins' book, 5-Second Rule, he was watching that TV show, watching the shuttle launch is why she came up with the idea. She was watching the shuttle launch. Yeah. And she said, okay, tomorrow morning when my alarm goes off, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to get out of bed. And it changed her whole life. Just that one little thing. And her marriage was falling apart. She was drinking. She wasn't taking care of her kids. She's a commentator on CNN. They could call her at any moment and say, we need you in 15 minutes to be on CNN. Okay. If you don't have yourself together, how are you going to do that very well?
Right.
And so, she's one of the number one top female speakers in the world. And one of the reasons is simply because of that TED Talk. Within the last 2 minutes of that TED Talk, she explained the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule, and it changed the whole course of her career. So it really works for me. I know.
It does, definitely. So Sheila, if people wanted to connect with you, how can people find you?
So they can find me just by going to yeswomensnetwork.com, and they can do search for that. We're on Twitter. We're on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. Feel free to come and join the group. I apologize if that was a ding in your ear. Just got a noise. Go find me there. We're just about anywhere, just yeswomensnetwork.com. And there's just free resources there. You do need to share your email with us, but no credit card information or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask if there's anything that you have to offer, whether it's a small program or something free, but
yeah, just that free membership. The group is free as well. Just come and get connected with all of us, and then we'll just take it from there. I don't really have, if somebody wants some digital marketing or speaking, that's another thing that I love to do. But come find me on Yes Women's Network, and let's all get connected.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a couple more questions for you before I let you go. One of them is you just mentioned that you do speaking and things like that. What kind of events do you speak about when you do the speaking, and what is your podcast too about?
Sure. My podcast is called The Messy Back End of Entrepreneurship, where we talk about all that messy stuff that goes on in the back end. It's kind of funny how the name of that business came about, but I was telling my daughter one day when she was about to have an accident in the car, I said, "You're going to make me have a mess in my seat." And she just got a good laugh out of that. And I started thinking, that's a pretty good idea. Entrepreneurs are constantly talking about, if I had somebody run the back end of my business, or the back end of my business is a mess. And so that's kind of how that came about. And we literally just talk about all that messy stuff, the things that people don't see, the editing of your podcast, the finding of guests, the sending out the calendar invites, the follow-up, I had to reschedule with you. All of that messy stuff that people don't see, that's what we talk about. It's pretty fun. We have some really great people on there, and I have a co-host, Nate Tucker. We just kind of feed off each other. He's one of my favorite people. He's hilarious. And so that's my podcast. We are not recording new episodes for that currently. I'm going to be starting a new podcast for Yes Women's Network. It's going to be called Her Milestones, where women can come on and they can talk about the milestones that they've reached in their life. I turned 50 this year. That's a big milestone. And so I decided I want to do 50 things in this year. And of course, here it is, like the end of April, pandemic. So much for the 50 things. I can't run 50 road races this year now.
You might have to do them back to back. You might have a little bit of time.
Maybe. When I speak anything from changing your building your hobbies, you're taking your hobbies and turning them into cash kind of things, where I can show people how to take their personal ideas and turn them into either a side gig or an actual business. And so I talk about that. I talk about branding. I talk about building a team. All of us businesses, we get in this place where we don't have the money to hire a team, but we can't move forward unless we hire a team. So that's, if anybody's wondering, that's the elusive next level. And that happens in businesses at certain income levels, where you're in this point where you have to reach that next level. And in order to turn that knob, usually it comes down to your team. And so I talk about that, team building. Also, one of my favorite things to talk about is the power of you. You need, will the real you please stand up, right? Because you know what? The real you is the last one to stand up. And the funny thing is, it's the hardest thing to do is to get the real you to stand up. But if you're looking outside of yourself, then you actually follow. And so a lot of that kind of goes together. But finding your own strength, your own joy, and standing in your own power is one of the things I really love talking about the most. And, you know, I had 8 speaking engagements canceled this year, just like a lot of people. And they were all for women's groups, everywhere from California to Florida. And so now we're doing a lot more podcasting right now. But, you know, just any entrepreneur group. I speak to real estate groups about marketing, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, and one thing that I would say is I'm sure you enjoy what you're doing too, right? I mean, you have, right?
I do.
And that's probably the one thing that sometimes people, you know, like you got to find joy in what you're doing so that it doesn't seem like it's work. Yes. And then you do it with even more pleasure, and even you put more energy to it. So you got to be able to find that. If there was one advice that you can give our listeners or viewers that they can do or act upon to overcome anything they're going through right now, what would that be?
That's a really good question. And my answer would be a question for you. Do you have options? I was talking to my mentor when I was going through my last divorce, and I felt I was struggling really a lot, and I didn't understand my feelings because I hadn't had these feelings before. And he said, it sounds to me like you feel like you're in prison. And I said, I do. All of a sudden, the whole realization of all of the feelings I had came to this point where I realized I was in prison. And he asked me this question. His name is Brooks Gibbs. He's one of my favorite people. He said, do you have options? All of a sudden for me, it's like the yellow brick road opened up right before me. And I knew exactly every step I needed to take. Now, I know that's not going to happen for everybody, where I knew exactly everything I was supposed to do for the next year. That's not going to happen for everybody. But if you look and see, what options do I have? Because your options are the key to your prison. Whatever you're struggling with, if you can find just one option to get you started, that one thing to move you forward, then you're going to be able to do what's next. So whether it's putting on mascara in the morning to make yourself feel good, or like for me, a lot bigger steps than that. And so, you know, just what are your options? Ask yourself that. If you're not sure what to do, what are my options?
Got you. And then act upon those actions, or whatever, whether it's one step or not.
Yep. Make a plan and do one thing at a time. And I did one thing at a time for 6 months. Packed up my girls and left what I had in my car. And that, you know, the car, me, what was in it, and we left. And so it just sounds like that sounded so easy, but it wasn't. It was difficult. And so that's why my 2019, I'd like to just take 2019 and just like drop it in it, you know, the black hole or something, start over from that. But realizing that I had options in the first place was really just what was the key to moving me forward to where I was.
Yeah. And I like that because, you know, when you're going through a challenge, you focus so much on the things that
you don't have,
right. And you don't think about, hey, maybe there are options, maybe there's things you can do, yet because you're so focused on that stuff, the negative stuff, you tend to forget that. So I really like that.
Yeah. One of the things, so your affirmation, I believe you said, was, Cesar, I love you. I can't remember the other two, but, you know, I love you. I think you're wonderful, whatever it was that you said. So for me, my affirmations are, I have all of the time, energy, and resources I need to do what I need to do today. And sometimes, you know, they say it's not it's who you know, not what you have. And that is absolutely 100% true. There's always somebody that you can call. There's always somebody. Even if you just go downtown, find somebody on the street, says, hey, you got 5 minutes, you know? There's always going to be some option that you can find. And so, you know, meet people, go out and you know, network with people and make friends, and, you know, and that's real easy to do in this social age that we've got right now.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. So yeah, no, I love that. That's a good way to kind of end this. So Sheila, thank you so much for being here, sharing your story and some of your ideas. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure you like this podcast, you share, you comment, you check us out. Make sure you go out and check out Sheila and connect with her. And till next time, we'll see you at the next podcast show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.